Good day, beloved brothers and sisters in Christ. In the heart of the small town of San Giovanni Rotondo, Italy, a remarkable mystery has gripped both the faithful and the skeptical. The strange and recent phenomena surrounding the incorrupt body of Saint Padre Pio. For decades, pilgrims have flocked to his resting place, drawn by the miracles attributed to this humble Capuchin friar. Padre Pio's sanctity is not merely celebrated in legend. His incorrupt body, which has remained largely intact since his death in 1968, has been a visible testament to his holiness, a symbol of divine intervention in a decaying world. But in recent years, this sacred relic of the saint has been shrouded in an eerie transformation, one that threatens to challenge the limits of faith and reason alike. Recent observations have shown that his stigmata, the marks of Christ's wounds that Padre Pio carried for half a century, have begun to change in unexpected ways. It is said that these wounds, once a divine seal of his connection to Christ's passion, have started to show signs of corruption. This inexplicable deterioration has left theologians, scientists, and devotees at a crossroads. What does this mean? How are we to understand this development? Is this a test of faith, a sign, or something far more mysterious than we can comprehend? Saint Padre Pio, born Francesco Forgione in 1887, was not just another saint in the long annals of Catholic history. His life was marked by an extraordinary blend of suffering, sanctity, and the supernatural. From his childhood visions to the profound spiritual battles he endured, Padre Pio's life seemed bound by a higher calling. But it was in 1918, in a small chapel while praying before the crucifix, that he was bestowed with the stigmata mystical wounds that mirrored those of Christ during his crucifixion. These wounds were not merely a physical affliction. They became emblematic of Padre Pio's profound union with the Passion of Christ. They were visible signs of his suffering, but also of his willingness to bear that suffering for the salvation of souls. For over 50 years, Padre Pio's stigmata were a visible and constant manifestation of his connection to the divine, leading many to regard him as a living symbol of faith. When he passed away in 1968, many believed that his work on earth had only just begun. It was no small miracle that when his body was exhumed in 2008, it was found to be incorrupt, a rare phenomenon where a body does not undergo the typical processes of decomposition. For the Catholic faithful, this was seen as another confirmation of his sainthood, another testament to the divine favor that rested upon him. His body was placed on display, drawing millions of pilgrims, all in awe of the purity that had survived death. But now, this purity seems under threat, as the once immaculate stigmata on his body show signs of darkening, cracking, and decay. In the past few years, whispers have circulated among the pilgrims and the clergy. Padre Pio's wounds, his stigmata, are no longer as they once were. The wounds that once shone with an almost otherworldly clarity now appear to have changed. Visitors have described seeing fissures opening around the edges of the stigmata, and there are reports of a faint yet foul odor emanating from the marks, a far cry from the sweet scent of sanctity that had once surrounded his relics. Even more troubling are the traces of blood that seem to ooze from the cracks in the wounds, staining the bandages that once served as protection. Scientists have attempted to study this phenomenon, though few definitive answers have emerged. Theories range from natural decay to the impact of the changing environment on the saint's body. Yet, this doesn't account for the fact that only the stigmata appear to be affected. The rest of his body remains incorrupt, as if the wounds themselves are carrying out some secret, divine process. Could this be a symbolic rupture? A divine message? Or could it be, as some speculate, a final trial for Padre Pio, who even in death continues to bear the weight of suffering? Archaeologists and forensic experts, often called in to examine such relics, have noted that incorrupt bodies are exceedingly rare, and the partial decay of a specific part, especially the stigmata, adds another layer of complexity to this already inexplicable case. These findings only deepen the mystery, leading some to consider whether this event points to something larger, something spiritual and beyond the reach of modern science. In religious circles, the corruption of Padre Pio's stigmata has ignited fierce debate. Some theologians argue that this deterioration may be a test of faith. Just as Christ's body bore the ultimate suffering, Padre Pio's body may now be carrying out the final chapter of that divine narrative. Could this be a reminder that all earthly things, even those sanctified by God, must pass through suffering and decay before reaching ultimate redemption? Others see this as a warning, a call for humanity to return to faith in the face of growing secularism. The corruption of the stigmata may be seen as a symbol of the moral decay in the modern world. Padre Pio, who was a beacon of unwavering faith, may now be pointing to the need for spiritual renewal. His wounds, once a source of hope, could now be a sign that humanity's spiritual wounds need healing. This is not the corruption of a saint, it is the corruption of a faithless world, reflected in the very body of one of its holiest figures. Still, there are those who find hope even in the midst of this unsettling phenomenon. They believe that Padre Pio's continuing suffering, even in death, is an invitation to deepen their own faith. Just as the faithful were drawn to him during his life for spiritual healing, they now come to his tomb seeking solace, convinced that his enduring suffering is a mystical intercession on their behalf. For those who visit the tomb today, the sight of the cracked stigmata carries both fear and reverence. There is fear in the unknown, in the breaking of what was once whole. But there is also hope, a deep and abiding faith that through this new trial, something divine is being revealed. The faithful who gather around Padre Pio's tomb see this not as a tragedy, but as a continuation of his sacrifice. They believe that just as Christ's wounds brought salvation to the world, Padre Pio's decaying stigmata may be a sign that grace is still being poured out through his suffering. The imagery is profound. The bleeding, cracked wounds as a mirror of the brokenness in our own lives, the darkening scars as symbols of the pain that so many carry. Yet, within that brokenness, there is also light. The blood that seeps from the saint's wounds is seen by many as a renewal of his spiritual mission, a reminder that holiness does not come without suffering, and that even in death, God's power transcends the natural world. As these strange events unfold at the tomb of Saint Padre Pio, they challenge us to reflect on our own faith and understanding of the divine. Are we, too, willing to accept the mystery that surrounds us? Can we trust in God's plan, even when it defies logic and explanation? In the end, the corruption of Padre Pio's stigmata may not be a sign of defeat, but rather a call to return to the roots of faith, a faith that embraces suffering, that believes in miracles, and that finds hope even in the face of the unknown. For Padre Pio, the wounds he bore in life were a path to holiness. Perhaps, in death, they still serve as a beacon for all those who seek to walk in faith.